Good evening, everyone, and a very extreme and I must say most naughty welcome to all. So, let me start with a famous African proverb which says, until the lion learns how to write, every story will glorify the hunter, right? And as it may always seem that the books, stories, poems were written with a clear dictate to make the hero out of the hunter. And we all adore heroes to the extent of worshipping them. But think for a moment. Just a tiny little bit. Did we really hear the other side of the story? In most of the cases, the answer will be no. So when we read about Ramayana from Ravan's perspective or from the point of view of Bali or Mahabharata as Duryodhan's experienced, we are exposed to an alternate world, or I can say altogether a different world. This is precisely what the book of our today's guest are aiming to do. So people, let me present to you Mr. Anand Neelakantan. Please join me in welcoming Anand sir. Welcome Anand.
It is a pleasure to be here and talk about Asuras. So it is not just about Asuras. Let me give a small brief introduction about what I have been doing. I have been telling stories for adults for the last 8-9 years. I had done it in television, I had done it for films, I had done it as books. As books go, this is my 8th book, but the first one for kids. Otherwise, I had started with Asura, Tale of the Vanquished, the Ravan's Ramayana. Then I came up with Ajaya series, that is Duryodhana's Mahabharata. Then came Vanara, Bali, Sugriva and Tara. Still, after that in television, I did Mahabali Hanuman, the screenplay of it. Then Chakravarti Ashoka. Part of his screenplay around 150 episodes. Then I had done Siya Ke Ram in Star TV. Then I was a part of Bahubali and it is coming as a Netflix series. There are 3 books. 2 books are already out. Rise of Shivagami and Chaturanga. The 3rd one is coming. Then I have been working in feature films. I have been working for television series, both in English, both in Hindi. I write in English and also in Malayalam. I published 1 book in Malayalam. 8 books in English now, and I think the next book will be coming in 1 or 2 months, the 3rd part of Bahubali. So that is it. That is beating my drum. I'm an Asura, so I don't shy away from that. This is what I have done. I also write columns in New Indian Express, Sunday Standard. Some of you, perhaps parents at least, might have read some of my columns called Acute Angle in Sunday Express. Every fortnight it comes. And I write irregular columns on invitation to various things across the world. So that is it about me. So this is all about the new book. Last month only it came. This is all about naughty Asuras. So now we can start.
Wonderful, and I am sure there are so many Bahubali fans are in the house. At least I can say for myself, I am a big, huge Bahubali fan, and I'm a fan of yours.
Thank you so much.
So, let me ask you, Anand, how much of your childhood inspired you to write this book? And why very extreme, most naughty Asuras? I mean, did watching your children grow up in this electronic world somewhere inspired you to write a book?
Definitely. See, I consider one way my children are lucky. All the children in this era are lucky because science has advanced, technology has advanced. One way they are unlucky too. Because I had a very Malgudi days kind of childhood. I don't know how many of the kids will be familiar with Malgudi days. We all will be, somebody of avid readers would have read it, some would have seen it in the television. Even now it is there, Amazon I think. So I grew up in a very picturesque village, very beautiful village in Kerala, near the backwaters, sea, temples, temple elephants, and lot of myths and lores to surround me. So there were a lot of this. Now what has happened, it has become a part of like any suburban town, no, the bigger city has swallowed it. The Cochin has swallowed it. I was a suburb. Rather, that was the capital of Cochin Royal Kingdom. So there were lots of palaces, temples. This place is called Tripunithura. I don't know whether you can pronounce it, but it was called Tripunithura. It is still called Tripunithura, but it's a part of Cochin city now. It has its own old palace and lot of temples, around 108 temples. And in Kerala temples, what is there is that there are lots of supernatural creatures. That's a belief. The Yakshis, the Yakshas, Gandharvas. So every tree has a tale to say. Every pond has a tale to say. There are plenty of ponds. The place is full of ponds. And now many apartments have come there, but otherwise there was plenty of ponds, and every stone has a tale to tell. It was a world of magic. So I had a childhood like that. I had, especially power supply was not that reliable those days. So once monsoon comes, the current goes. Then the magical time starts. Once the power supply goes, the entire with the thick greenery and the foliage around and the wind rustling, you can hear the supernatural creatures whispering. You can hear on the attics of the old homes something or other rolling. And all these were mischievous asuras. There was this creature I still remember called Kuttichatan, what he used to call. It's a Chota Satan or Satan or Satan, whatever way you call it. So this creature is very naughty. So this it will make sound, it will howl. It's all more of your imagination. But as a kids, we didn't have any gizmos to play with. We didn't have anything to see in the TV or anything. So we created our own world. So we know that if we lift a rock, there will be something, not just worms or vermins, but something may jump out of it. So there were creatures all around, especially in the nights, especially when there was no power supply, and 6 months it rains. So in the rain, through the rain, there were stories like the kind of creatures which will come catching the raindrops. It is not drop there. No, in Kerala, this monsoon is very heavy. So it's like a single stream. So it just comes down from the sky and laughs at you, at your window. It knocks and laughs at you. So this was the world which I was used to. And then with the temples, with a lot of tales on Puranas, with all these things, it was a fantastic world. I thought I should bring it back. Why? Because my kids also, they grew up in city. We live in Mumbai now. It's a crowded city. It has its own charm, no doubt, but it's a totally different world. Here it is full of light. I will say it is full of light pollution. Once so much light is there, once so much television is there, once so much mobile phone is there, your imagination comes down. You are fed, everything it is fed to you. That is where the charm of stories comes, the storytelling comes. And even when they were reading more of beautiful books, no doubt, but they all come from the West, from J.K. Rowling's and other things. Suddenly you feel, what happened to all our ghosts? What happened to all our goblins? Nobody knows about it. So it was my duty to bring them back. So I thought I should bring them back so that it will be good for the children of this era. So I didn't want to be preachy also, because my parents, grandparents didn't preach me with this kind of goblins. They were all naughty creatures. It was fun. So in the book also I thought I would bring that here, bring it with fun, have a folkish way of telling it, have some songs where children can play it out, sing together, make it as a one-act play in the schools and other things. So this is first among many books to come. That's all I will say.
No, it's very good. That is why the different characters, the Nakura, Bhasmasur, Apati Babati, they all are very colorful character in the entire book. And I just love the poems which are written, in each story. They are so good. So when you have so colorful and very interesting childhood, and when I see your life journey, it is a series of, it's like, oh, I am so bored of this, let's do something else. So, from someone who hates maths, selling frying pans, running a resort, engineering, then IOCL. So, what is the urge to tell stories to people in all these things, And that too from a perspective of the anti-heroes.
I didn't learn I didn't get familiar with this Indian Puranas through television. Though I wrote for television a lot. My thing was through the folk tales, through the temple performances, the classical arts. So it was like a cultural seeping in. It was not like I take a book, read from first page to last. It came Ramayana, and like A.K. Ramanujan says, the Ramayana and Mahabharata for a traditional Indian nobody hears it for the first time. It comes in bits and pieces from here and there, and it seeps into you, it dissolves into you. So for us, there was nothing like villain, hero or anything like that. In traditional storytelling, there is no hero or villain.
True, true.
Especially especially in the south, there is no hero villain concept. Why? Because Tulsidas Ramayana has influenced a lot, which was written in a period when the Gangetic Plains went under an alien rule, at least which was alien at that time. So it was a reaction to that. Whereas the Ramayanas, which we are familiar with, where the kingdoms continued, the old kind of lifestyle with all its glory and all its warts and badness, everything, because nothing is good or bad in the world. It will have both positive and negative. So it had a lot of issues, but the kingdoms like Chera kingdom and all, it has been continuing for last 2000, 3000 years. The same dynasties ruled. It's a very traditional place. There the storytelling is more confident because you are not been conquered. So it is not like you don't have to project a villain. So they say that Ramlila itself, which is very alien, though Ramayana is not alien, Ramlila is alien. Lynching of Ravan is alien to the culture in the south. So here it is a very more confident telling. We used to question it a lot. Even if you see the old films in Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu and all, like Telugu, N.T. Ramarao and all have played, or in Kannada, Rajkumar, in Tamil also, Malayalam also, many of them have played from the other perspectives, nothing new. They have played as Ravan, they have played as Duryodhan, they have played as Kamsa, because storytelling was very confident. There was no hero-villain concept at all, which is true about actual Ramayana also. There is no hero-villain concept. The hero-villain concept came because we got influenced by another method of storytelling, which is very Western in nature. It's nothing wrong with that. It's a different style where everything is black and white. Good versus bad, God versus Satan, heaven versus hell. So it's all duality, night versus day, forces of darkness. If you see the Marvel, if you see the various things which come from Hollywood, it talks about that. It is like always good versus evil. Whereas if you really see Mahabharata, what is good, what is evil? It is only in the later era we started ascribing Kauravas as evil. In Vyasa Mahabharata, they are not evil. So is not, Ravan also is not evil. None of the Puranas are about good or evil. It is more about karma and karmavala. So I come from that story world. So I thought that I had to put the record straight. So while I was writing Mahabali Hanuman, where Bali comes as the antagonist, I won't call the villain, the anti-hero, in the television, same day evening I'll be writing Vanara, where Bali comes as the hero and Sugriva becomes the anti-hero.
Anti-hero, yeah.
So morning and evening you are writing morning one thing, same you are reversing the viewpoint in the evening. And that is how I think we parents also should tell the tale, because otherwise kids will become judgmental. This is good, this is bad. We don't want that. Why India was tolerant, why India accepted all kind of forms is because the traditional Indian society had this capability of keeping contrasting and contradicting thoughts together. That is why in the same country we have got extreme ahimsa of the Jainas who sweep the floor while walking so that they won't accidentally even step on a worm, to Aghoris, to the Kali, you are sacrificing to Kali, same coexist in the same culture, same space without any problem. So that is how we have, so that I was trying to bring back that classical Indian, this thing which we grew up and which we were familiar with. Because I thought TV, when you write for TV, the problem is you write for what is commonly known. There is no space for what is uncommon. There is no space for subaltern. Whereas India, it's all about subaltern literature. Every story, there is a counter story. Always. So I was trying to bring that thing.
Maybe that is the reason all the center characters in your stories are so much talented, I can say. In this book also, the Asuras are not just naughty, they are a powerhouse themselves, music, warcraft, combat and whatnot. They also have magical powers, and I must confess one superpower which I wish I had, that is shape-shifting. I wish I had that. So what prompted you to deliver these stories in this entertaining way? Why not only facts?
Storytelling in India is always entertaining. No? Storytelling has to be entertaining. Otherwise, facts are irrelevant. Facts keep changing. What doesn't change is the underlying message inside that, which you should not spell it out. Saying that this is the moral of the story is a very Sunday school type of thing which Britishers had brought. That you tell a story and then you give a moral. That's a preachy way. So we are Indian storytellers never preached. It is for you to find out what it is. Because your truth need not be my truth. So it raises more questions than answers. And if you see the entire religion, whether it is all the religions which came out from India, I will say the thought process, they are more about questioning rather than commandments, rather than saying you shall do this, you shall not do this. It's not that. Even Gita is a debate. The entire Upanishads are debate. Buddha gives debate only. In his sermon also, when he does the sermonizing, it's not that he tells it and everybody obeys it. It's about everyone questions Buddha. And Buddha's, one of the fundamental thing what Buddha says is don't believe anything. Just because I have told it, just because someone else has told it, something has been written in scriptures, which is an echo of what Krishna says after Gita also. I have given you the most secret of all knowledge, but you have to use your intelligence, intellect, and your skepticism to question each of what I have told and come to your own conclusion. Is the last final word of Krishna after telling the Gita. So, if a story gives an answer, then there is no story, it is a guidebook. The story has to keep on coming back to give you thinking. So the child has to think, the kid has to think. You don't want puppets saying that this is a story, this is what you have to learn. No. The more, we were all encouraged to question when we were little, we used to question a lot. And I used to be so naughty, I used to question a lot not, which I 99% of the time I didn't get the answer. So I am still questioning in a grand scale through my books. Whether Ramayana or Mahabharata, it is from the other side, writing from the other side. It's a part of the continuing questioning tradition, which I believe is the Indian tradition.
Or maybe we can say that mythology is so deeply ingrained in our genes that most Indian enjoys hearing these stories again and again. Right?
It is never again and again the same story. You know, every time the story changes subtly. If you really see, the way you tell the story today will be different from the way you tell it tomorrow. It happens to yourself.
I'm sure when I was a child, I heard stories from my grandparents, mythological ones, and of course, they are magical ones too, like Jatak Kathaएं or maybe Ramayana or Mahabharata. And I'm sure all of us have heard these stories in different ways. So I need to understand how important it is to impart this knowledge to our children now. Is it relevant in today's time?
First thing, we are not imparting any knowledge. Knowledge imparting is not our idea. In the sense, we are not, that's what I said, we should not give morals. Many of the books I found, many books are not doing justice to our culture. Even though a lot of them are there, they are trying to follow something which is totally non-Indian, like giving a moral in Jataka Kathaएं, or giving a moral like they are following the Aesop fables model. It is not that. That is not the Indian way of telling it. What we do is we fire the imagination of the child. That is what Indian storytelling is all about. When you are telling Ramayana, you are not going to tell it is like that, because a child will get 100 questions and you have to encourage that. He will ask why Rama killed Bali hiding behind a tree. It is incomprehensible for a child, isn't it? Why did Shiva cut off the head of a boy who stopped him? It becomes difficult. You can only force with some answers. There are actually no answers.
Right.
So that they have to find it out. They have to reach to their conclusion. And one good thing about us is that there is nothing wrong rejecting all these tales also, if that suits you. There is no imposing of thoughts. So a child will get I used to ask this kind of questions. If Hanuman can become so big, what was the need of Rama to build a bridge? Hanuman could have just lied down like this, from Rameshwaram to Sri Lanka, and everybody could have walked over his back.
Yes.
Or he could have carried him, he can fly, he can carry him, he could have done a shuttle service, he can become as big as the sky. He can take Rama, everyone, all the entire army and jump there. Why are they building this? So this kind of questions keep coming. When I was telling it to my children, they will ask these questions. Then what happens? The storyteller and who is hearing, they are thinking together. Because the more questions they ask, everyone will have different questions. Suddenly you are forced to see the story from some other side. The kid will ask very uncomfortable questions. Like, why didn't Devaki and Vasudeva, kids are smart, Devaki and Vasudeva were kept on the same cell by Kamsa. He could have just separated them, and what was the need of killing 8 kids?
True. Yes.
Suddenly this
writing for grades is a different task. It's altogether different and difficult task, I must say. So I tell you,
then you are forced to go back. You are forced to go back and say that, okay, there is a curd. Why these questions have been answered by many generation of kids when they were told. So you cannot do a peripheral reading from Amritsar is a beautiful thing, but I am telling it will force you, if you allow your kid to question, it will force you to go back and find the answer. I don't want to give you a spoon-fed answer because there are 10, 15, 20 answers for each of these. So you have to discover it with your child, with your nephew, niece, son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter. You will have to discover it along with them. So allow them to question. The more they question, it is good for you and good for them also. Because the purpose of the story is to raise the imagination and to make them think from all perspectives. That is why there are so many countertelling. It is not a commandment thing. It is not the difference between the holy books in India and what comes from other places is that nothing is superior or inferior. But the difference is that here it is all about, it is like a signboard. You did not follow it exactly. Even if you don't follow. Let me tell you, if you reject all the holy books, still we will remain part of this culture. Nobody is going, at least until recently, I don't know what will happen tomorrow because people are trying to change this culture also to a bad imitation of something else, which is not at all Indian. But otherwise, you had the freedom to accept or reject anything. Or make, if you don't like any of these 18 Puranas and thousands of variations of it, you are free to create your own Puranas, right? That you encourage the child to make his own stories with the same characters. So whatever we are having is a part of this. We have inherited a great storytelling culture. Let us not kill it with giving spoon-fed answers to the kids, saying that Rama is good, Ravan is bad, or Ravan is good, Rama is bad, or either way, any of these things. Because in Purana, this is called Leela. It's a play of Bhagavan. In a play, when your child plays police and thief, it doesn't mean the one who plays thief is bad, isn't it? It's a role play they are doing. The entire Purana is called as Bhagavan's Leela. It's a role play they are doing. So something deeper is being conveyed. It's not just good versus evil or anything like that. So it is encouraging the kids to see the God himself is not perfect. It's a great lesson, a great humility. This is a story from the book itself I am telling. This is about the Bhasmasura. Bhasmasura is a clumsy asura. Whatever he touched, how many of you are clumsy? I confess that I am very clumsy. Whatever I touch, just now I was setting up the mic and it fell down from my hand. The light fell down from my hand. So I have a clumsy hand. So Bhasmasura was like that. He was clumsy and he used to be scolded by his parents for being clumsy. If he takes something, it falls down. So he grows up like this, and when he grows up, he has a pet pig called Nakura. So Nakura, what is Nakura's hobby? Nakura goes into the drain, dirty water, rolls in it, comes inside and shakes himself so that the water will fall on everyone and everyone will scream, yell, and he finds happiness in that. These are all for two fun creatures. So they go around and they decide that Bhasmasura decides that he wants to get a boon. So the story is big. I am trying to tell it in 5-10 minutes. 5 minutes perhaps max. So you can read the story in detail. Bhasmasura prays to Lord Shiva. So who is Lord Shiva? Lord Shiva is called Bholenath. He is the one who doesn't discriminate between asuras or devas. There are a lot of people in our stories called Asura, Deva, Gandharva, Kinnara. Like if you have read Harry Potter, you can find that, or if you have read Lord of the Rings, you can find that different worlds, no? Like that, we have 14 worlds. In different worlds, different kind of people are living. So one is Asura, who comes from Padal Lok, and there are another 3-4 Lok where Rakshasas are there, then Nagas are there, like that. So Bhasmasura belongs to that world. He wants to conquer all the 14 worlds, of which one is Earth, where Manavas or humans live. What he does, he wants to, since whatever he touches is to fall, he wants to take a revenge. So when he starts praying to Lord Shiva, he prays for many, he imitates lot of animals when he is praying. So what he does, he stands on his one leg and prays like that, he balances, he hangs from a tree like a bat, hangs upside down and prays. And he does a lot of these things. Finally, Shiva, fed up with him, comes and asks, what do you want here? Morning and evening you are calling me. What is that you want? And he says, I want a boon. And Shiva says, okay, I can give you a boon. What do you want? And Bhasmasura asks a funny boon. He says, whatever I touch shall burn. And Shiva says innocently, okay, let it be so. Whatever you touch, let it burn. Then comes his naughtiness out. Bhasmasura says, but you are a Deva, you are Mahadeva. Are you cheating me? How will I know whether what I am telling is true? What you are telling is true. So I want to see. So Shiva says, okay, you try it. So Bhasma touches a tree, the tree goes up. Then Bhasma is happy, ha ha ha. He touches a rock, it goes up into ashes. Whatever he touches, it is going. And then Shiva watches it like an indulgent parent, like the child is doing mischief. He watches it, and Bhasmasura starts shouting, Bhasmasura starts singing, and all other Asuras come because they know that he has got a boon. So the Bhasmasura starts singing. So what does the Asura say? Soon Bhasmasura started singing loudly, his voice directed at the skies. All other Asuras joined in the chorus. After every stanza, that Bhasmasura belted out. It was a terrifying song of power. And Indra, the king of Devas, he started trembling in fear when he heard it. Indra is in his listing, and there are lakhs of Asuras, thousands of Asuras. Just imagine a huge valley. The valley, there are lots of Asuras standing with their clubs, swords and everything, and they are shouting. They are shouting and they are singing the terror. They sung in chorus, burn down, burn down, burn down. Burn down, burn down, burn down. So Bhasmasura, when they say he will burn 1, 2, 3, 4, he is starting burning things. Start. Burn down, burn down, burn down. Hey Indra, king of Devas, hear me, king of Asuras. Know that I got the big boon. Whatever I touch shall burn soon. Now everyone in chorus, burn down, burn down, burn down. So pass on the pot of Amrita, your throne and sword of Vajra. Now when the kid will ask what all these things are, so you'll have to tell, you will be forced to tell all these stories. What is Amrita? What is Vajra? Don't worry, I'll be coming up with more books. Now pass on that pot of Amrita, your throne and sword of Vajra, for they belong to Asuras. Their king, I am the Bhasma. Burn down, burn down, burn down. Cease to be so arrogant. Hand over your elephant. That four-tusked white jumbo. No, my boon is no mumbo jumbo. Burn down, burn down, burn down. So like this, the Bhasmasura's army is rolling around. They are going everywhere, and suddenly Bhasma gets an idea. He looks at Shiva. But I am burning trees, I am burning mountains, I am burning elephants, I am burning whatever I can have. But will Devas burn? I want to test it on you. And now Shiva is in a quandary because he has given a boon. Once you give a boon, you cannot kill him against the god of gods. But now this Asura wants to burn Shiva himself. So Shiva starts running, and all the Asuras starts chasing him. They're singing this song, burn down, burn down, burn down. Burn down, burn down, burn down. They sing in chorus, and all of them, and Shiva doesn't have a choice to run. So where all Shiva runs, what all he does, that is in the book, that is taken from the Sthala Puranas, or what you call the legends in some localities, different parts of India. So that is in the book that you read through. Then the Shiva has to be saved because this Asura will burn down Shiva, and as per the god of gods, he cannot He is powerful enough to kill Bhasma, but he cannot do that. Why? Because you are given the boon and now you cannot go and punish him. Now Vishnu has to come. So most of the times in Puranas, this is what happens. Shiva, the innocent god, the Bholenath, gives boon and there will be trouble. Even Ravan, Shiva only had given the boon, and then Vishnu had to come back, suffer through all his life. Because Shiva is a jovial god, he will give the boon and he will sit in Kailas and enjoy. Poor Vishnu will have to come, and then he will have to do also here, he will have to do all these things. He has to fight the war, he has to use his wife and all those things in Ramayana. Ravan will take away and all those things. So here, the poor Vishnu comes as Mohini. So who is Mohini? Mohini is a beautiful damsel, beautiful woman, dressed as a Mohini. So can you imagine the Vishnu, Lord Vishnu, a male, the epitome of power, the epitome of the greatest god, god of gods, he comes as a beautiful woman called Mohini. And Bhasmasura is enticed by her. He wants to dance and he wants to marry Mohini. And Mohini puts a condition that I will marry only someone who can dance as well as. Now Bhasma is in trouble because he's an Asura, he doesn't know how to dance. There are Asuras who knows to dance. But Bhasmasura, as you know, is clumsy. He cannot dance, he has no sense of rhythm. So he says, I cannot dance. Mohini says, I will teach you. I will teach you how to dance. And Mohini starts dancing and Bhasma starts imitating her. And all the Asuras are so embarrassed because this fellow's dance is like, just imagine this fellow's dance. You can imagine your old uncle somewhere in the marriage dancing. He is dancing like that. It's so, and what all kids will be doing? You will be sitting with your covering your mouth and laughing. And this uncle is maybe drunk and dancing like that. Bhasmasura is dancing like many uncles dance in the marriage, old uncles dance in the marriage. He is dancing in a so clumsy and this manner, but because he wants to marry this Mohini. So Shiva sings, Shiva also is enjoying it. So suddenly what is a terrifying thing suddenly has become comical. So just imagine it like a, say, Zootopia or any cartoon of Disney. Just imagine it comes in a big screen. This clumsy big Asura who is as tall, 20 feet tall, he is dancing and things are tumbling down. Mountains are tumbling down because he is so powerful, but he dances in a clumsy way. And gracefully Mohini is dancing. And then he is imitating each of these things. Mohini keeps her hand on her head and looks at him. And Bhasma, he has forgotten himself in his dance. He also does the same. So what happens? Whatever he touches, that's a boon. Whatever he touches shall turn to ashes. So Bhasma touches his own head and puff, he goes, turning into ashes. So his own boon becomes his own curse because he didn't know what to do with that. Now, this is the story of Bhasmasura and Mohini, which is almost 15-20 pages, which I told in 5 minutes. So a lot of fun is happening. What happens to Nakula, what happens to other things, that you read in the book. Now to the lady who had asked me, how do you tell the morals? Now it's a moral is dissolved in that. When a kid hears it, many of the kids are gifted. We can say gifted by the nature, gifted by the God. If you don't know how to use it, you try to imitate it. Now what is Bhasma doing? He is not using his gift, he is imitating, enticed by someone else, trying to do what he cannot do. He imitates it and that is the cause of his destruction. This is one among hundreds of morals of the story. Is there another moral? There is a moral for Shiva. You should not give gift to those who do not deserve. That becomes his moral. So it is not just one moral, but we should not spell it out. The kid will understand all these things when you are telling. I spelled it out as an example only. But when you tell, the story is all about entertainment. The story is all about fun. It has to be interactive. And if you ask me, there are no better storyteller than mothers, especially to little kids. That is why the kids keep on asking for stories. Why? Because you are so splendid storytellers, you don't even realize it. Because you are changing the stories as per their need. So the kids keep on asking for stories. So be natural and tell the story. Don't worry about what moral this kid will get. Kids will, whatever morals you tell, kid is going to take whatever morals it is dissolved in that. So never worry about the model. Tell beautiful stories. Tell it in an entertaining fashion. Tell it without worrying. I am going to teach the kid something. Children doesn't learn like that. Children learns by imitating adults. If you want to teach kids something, be that what you want the kid to be. You have to be that. Other than that, telling n number of moral stories is not going to change the kid. So stories should be entertaining, stories should be fun, stories should be immersive, stories should be participative.
Yes, and this is a riveting read for someone like me. When I must say, it is an absolutely, certainly, definitely, superly cool mythology. So, if you guys are interested in challenging your thoughts and want to see a different perspective, I can see you guys running towards such a book. This is a wonderful having. It is wonderful having you, Anand, and thank you so much for the lovely and insightful session.
Thank you.